Hey Scream Therapy listeners. As you might imagine, doing the Scream Therapy podcast over the past year and a half has been emotionally heavy and a lot of work. Now that the podcast has reached 40 episodes, I've decided to take a break for a while so I can come back recharged. But fear not, during Scream Therapy's absence, I'm bringing you a spin-off podcast. It's called Flex Your Head. Each episode, I dissect a classic punk album with one of my dear friends as a guest. On this episode, I welcome Mike. Mike and I started a band when I was 25 and he was 18, so a long time ago. Since then, we've become lifelong friends who share a love for really angry music. Before we start, just a reminder to check out Scream Therapy and Flex Your Head episodes and my other stuff at screamtherapyhq.com. That's screamtherapyhq.com. And here we go. Flex your head! How's it going, Mike?
Good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. What album are we talking about today?
We're talking about a compilation, The Rebel Sound of Shit and Failure by Born Against.
Hello, shit. We're born against, so suck my fucking lizard.
Okay, so Born Against, The Rebel Sound of Shit and Failure. It's a collection of 7 inches and compilation tracks. It came out in 1995 on Sam's label Vermiform Records. Sam is the singer. McFeeters, I've always wanted to say that name out loud. I don't think I ever actually have. His label. Do you have any opening thoughts about it? I know we've been listening to it over the last couple of days and all of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of my thought because I'd listened to it like a million times when I was I guess a teenager in my 20s, but then I kept listening to it over the years, but now it's been like maybe a year or two since I've listened to it. The first thing that stuck out to me was the audio quality of the recording is better than a lot of the hardcore albums from that time period. I don't know if I was listening to like a remastered version or something, or if it's the original. I think it's the original.
Well, I know that Kill Rock Stars did a reissue of it at some point.
Right.
So maybe that's part of it. I actually bought the tape from Kill Rock Stars recently. It's pretty awesome to have it on tape. There's a lot of different sounds as far as production goes.
Right.
The song Marian Child, which is one of my favorite songs by Born Against, is very patchy.
Yeah.
Which is, I love shitty sounding recordings. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally serious. Born Against, they're only around for 4 years. And this compilation really shows all the ground that they covered.
Yeah, because it's a bunch of different songs and different recording sessions, so they all kind of sound differently. But like I noticed a lot of the hardcore from that time period, there's not much low end to it. It's kind of all like high end.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed with this, there's more of a bass sound, more of a full kind of sound to it. Yeah, I used to always listen to, I have the CD still that I got when I was a teenager. I like at the beginning where they're explaining like all the different shows they played and like who the different members that were in a band, like how many shows and stuff.
7 drummers and 4 bass players.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the Rorschach thing where the Rorschach one's even more hilarious because they're like, what is it, 20 people at our first show and like 10 people at our last show or something?
Yeah, 10 years later.
Yeah.
So where did you buy this CD by chance?
Oh, it must have been your record store, I guess. I think you probably put one of the songs on a mixtape.
Okay.
That you made, and then maybe, I don't know if you actually already had it in the store. I can't remember.
Maybe I ordered it preemptively, knowing that you would buy it.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
There was an entry here, I think it was in one of the liner notes, where it said, "We have the unrestrained power of Battalion of Saints and raw power with a political and lyrical edge of Ignition or Articles of Faith, both ideas that have all been vanquished from the New York hardcore scene." Other stuff we listened to lately: Superchunk, The Clash, Jawbox, Neurosis, Moss Icon, Infest, Pleasant Valley Children, Nation of Ulysses, Stretch Heads. God knows what the fuck our drummer John listens to.
That's in the tape that you got?
It's one of the liner notes, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's not in the CD that I have. Yeah.
That gives you an idea of some of the influences, but they're not like the rest of the hardcore bands of that era. They're just really sarcastic and grating and obnoxious, and I love them. I think they're one of the best hardcore bands. Pair it up against Quicksand or something, and it's not even the same realm.
Right, yeah.
Which is why I guess so many people are pissed off at them through the years.
Didn't really fit into the New York hardcore scene in that way, you mean?
Or any scene, really. Was there
Yeah.
another band like this? I mean, Heroin were kind of like that a little bit, but Heroin were more artsy, I always thought.
I guess I got the impression too that Born Against was pissing people off kind of because of their politics and their music and their songs. And I don't know how much they spoke about their politics, like when they played shows and stuff, maybe a bit, but there's the famous debate they had with, I think it's like Sick of It All or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the on a radio show. Yeah.
Yeah, and wasn't there another New York style tough guy band that was after them as well?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The Answer Machine. Hey, Born Against, you better be fucking careful or something.
Yeah.
Click. I was listening to a podcast with Sam actually recently, and he was really looking back at the whole time, and he's actually quite embarrassed by it. And he says he doesn't really like any of the music he does or his writing. He just gets really embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And looks back on it like that. From this podcast today, he had a lot of severe mental health issues pretty much all through that era, panic attacks, but he was definitely lashing out at people, which, we think is, oh, that's really cool. But when there's something more behind it, it's a little bit concerning in some ways.
I was thinking about that recently because I've read his 2 books that he put out. The last one, or most recent one, just a couple years ago, is called Exploded View.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good and creative, but also touching on things that are like happening in the real world right now. And then I read something he wrote after it, and he's like, oh, this book is kind of a write-off. Like the world has already like gone past this book. The book's kind of useless now. And I was like, that's kind of too bad to have that kind of negative. Like I thought it was good. Yeah. I'm like, why is he kind of beating himself up over it? Yeah.
Yeah, I read The Loom of Ruin. That was super good.
Yeah.
He's a really good fiction writer. He also has a book out about the hardcore
really? Yeah.
world. Yeah, and he writes a lot about Born Against tour diaries and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be worth reading. He did a really long article for, I want to say it was Vice, about the guy from the Dicks.
Oh yeah.
About his life and his mental health issues over the years. So yeah, it's supposed to be really good. I want to get that. Back to the rebel sound of Shit and Failure.
Yeah.
What about some of the highlights of the album?
I like it all pretty much. There's the one that's where it's just Mike mumbling or something. That's kind of funny, but
yeah,
I guess you could say that's the throwaway track or something.
There are no throwaway tracks on this album.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, I like that song. That they're all pretty different lyrically or topically, I guess. And there's also kind of like the different phases of the band. The last 4, 5, 6 tracks are kind of my favorite when they kind of melded with Universal Order of Armageddon.
Yeah.
Just for like the musicianship, but also the lyrics get way more personal. And I guess it's like Adam's writing the lyrics for those last songs instead of Sam.
Okay.
Kind of this really interesting mix of the personal and political. The main song that always stuck out for me is my favorite Housing Project at the end. It's so kind of brutal, but it's also like really simple and really personal at the same time. It kind of encapsulates the band in a way, that song, I think.
Do you have any sense of who played bass on what song? Because I know Tony Joy was in Born Against for a year or so, and he was also in Universal Order of Armageddon. And I also know Neil was, he was the main bass player, Neil Burke, near the beginning. But there's some super amazing bass lines on this record, some really cool churning bass. It's the Screeching Weasel cover, Janelle, which is weird. We'll talk about that in a minute, how weird that is.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, the bass playing on there is amazing.
The last 6 songs on the album or compilation are Tony Joy. If you listen to the bass playing, you can tell it's kind of a mosaic on Universal Order of Armageddon. Even though he played guitar in those bands, you can sort of compare the sound, his bass playing in Born Against to his guitar playing in other bands. I really like it.
So Screeching Weasel. Do we have to mention this? But I guess we should. 2 covers, Go Fuck Yourself, but they slow it down by half, which is kind of weird and awesome. And then Janelle, which is one of the Screeching Weasels, kind of poppy, Born Against doing that song. I think it's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I got the CD single. I guess it was a split 7-inch that
Yeah.
comes from. On the other hand, is like Screeching Weasels playing this song about genocide in El Salvador and stuff, which is just like totally, it's like Born Against lyrics on this compilation of just Born Against. It doesn't make sense as much, but when you hear it with the Screeching Weasel on the other side, even though they're kind of a fucked up band, and
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of fucked up that they're singing these songs that they don't care about the lyrics at all.
Speaking of weird, fucked up things to sing about, they do the Different Strokes theme song.
Oh yeah, the moving on
Moving
up.
on up,
Oh,
yeah.
Moving on up to the east side, to a street on the bottom of the sky. Well, we're moving on up to the east side, where we're finally gonna be in the pride. Please don't burn the kitchen. Please don't burn the trail.
They do some weird things. Dog bless them for it, that they're so strange. Liner notes are hilarious, but in regards to lyrics, he was influenced by situationism.
Oh,
So the theory of behavior is influenced by external situational factors rather than internal traits or motivations. That's kind of an interesting idea. It's real Zen, new age stuff we're talking about. That's kind of interesting because, you always got the sense that he was just spouting out, and he does. But the idea that some of the stuff that he saw around him and then echoing it back, some of the violence and just shitty things in life that he was turning on its head. I liked in the liner notes how it said the song Eulogy. It just says, "This song got us in a lot of trouble."
I think that's the one about his friend. Yeah, that one kind of reminded me of Minor Threat, that first Minor Threat song.
Yeah.
Losing a friend to a dogmatic version of religion, yeah.
The song Marian Child for me has always been one of my favorites. In fact, I think we wrote a song for our band, which was we completely tried to rip it off with way less interesting lyrics probably. But just the idea that hearing a guy in a hardcore band singing about anti-abortionists and women's right to choose that was a great moment for me. And I think that's one of the moments where I was able to carry through in my own creative process later, to have that, wanting to speak out and not feeling like you can't say or address certain topics. And this is, back, probably I first heard this when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, that's kind of interesting because they're all men. I guess later they had Kira was a drummer, but I think that was later on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was right at the end of Born Against, actually. She played with them for a while. Yeah, that one kind of always stuck out to me. I think that might have been a song you put on the mixtape for me that was kind of my introduction. But yeah, it always really stuck out to me, and it's kind of brutal too. Those first few songs are all kind of referencing religion and the irony of their actual disrespect for human life, but then them kind of covering it up by this imaginary thing about fetuses being aborted.
Mm-hmm.
And that stands out to me now, the confirmation of all these unmarked graves for residential schools. I just kind of drew that connection now, where this Christian religion, organized Christian churches, like portraying themselves as being all good and they care about life and all this, but then it's completely the opposite. They don't care about life at all, or they only care about certain people's lives, but they don't care about women's lives, and they don't care about, Native people's lives.
There's the heavy stuff, but then they also have this really sarcastic, sometimes hilarious stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I love this band, is because you can get that knowledge, that experience from them, but you can also laugh. The beginning of the album, "Hi, we're Born Against." Suck my lizard or whatever. Yeah. What is it? We're
Something
born
like
against. Anyways, we played it before, so you can go back and hear it. Just the fact that that's the very first thing on this compilation really sets the tone for that smart ass. They're fairly young. They just stuck out their necks. There is no turning back from that once you stick out your neck, especially in a hardcore scene like in New York and New Jersey.
Yeah.
You got to follow that path. It's too late to turn back at that point.
I mean, I think the sarcasm and the humor is good. For some people, it just comes naturally, I guess. But also, I think it's kind of a good way to criticize things that are wrong in the world, is through humor and sarcasm, better than just being totally straightforward and serious. Yeah, like a really heavy political thing. I think the humor aspect of it poking fun at the system or aspects of oppression and things that are wrong in the world. I think the humor kind of actually gives it a stronger edge. In a way, it's more easier for people to digest. I guess it pissed people off too, on the other hand, but
Eternal God, we approach thee.
I was not friends of mine. Needed something. Wake up, God, yeah. Convenient answers and a cheap way out. Yourself without action dying. Took up my life. God,
I thought this is funny too. In the Good Father liner notes, it says, bassist and drummer tried to skip the first recording date and tried to quit later that night, but were only successful a week later.
twisted their arm.
But yeah, they definitely went through a lot of people in their band.
Yeah.
And we haven't really talked too much about Adam because he was in Life's Blood with Neil,
Right.
and then they formed Born Against. But then he started a band called Young Pioneers, which I know you're a fan of.
Yeah.
He brought so much to this band as well. It wasn't just the bass playing and Sam. The drumming was also really good. But yeah, Adam was really the anchor for it all in some ways. He had the really jangly stuff going on, but he also had the really hard, powerful stuff as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's musically the anchor of the band. Like his guitar playing's really good. And I guess I got into Life's Blood and Young Pioneers later on. And they're both like really different bands, but it's interesting to see the evolution, I guess, of his guitar playing. And then later in Young Pioneers, he's writing lyrics again, like at the end of Born Against. I think he did some writing, like they used to put out Born Against zines. They had like Dear Jesus, and they had a couple other zines that Adam was involved in like writing to. Yeah.
What do you think of Sam's other bands, the ones that came after Born Against?
Yeah, there was Men's Recovery Project, which was Sam and a couple other people. They did have that 1 7-inch, which is actually just Born Against. It's like a reunion, but they just called it Men's Recovery Project. It's kind of like a spoof. They're singing songs like they're in the 80s. They have a song about Ronald Reagan and stuff. It kind of makes sense as being like a Men's Recovery Project kind of thing too.
Yeah.
It's Adam and Brooks from Born Against.
Okay.
I don't know why they did that, but it's actually a really good 7-inch. It's just straightforward hardcore, not like the rest of Men's Recovery Project. But I like Men's Recovery Project a lot too.
I like Wrangler Brutes as well. They're really good.
Yeah, for sure.
I've seen some live footage of Born Against shows, and some of it's really cantankerous and baiting people, which is funny, but in retrospect, you got to wonder, well, how much fun were these guys having playing these shows?
Yeah. I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, but the first Men's Recovery Project show, they billed it as the follow-up to Born Against, former members of Born Against and stuff. And then people showed up and they didn't even play. They just ate a bowl of cereal or something and then left. Like it was just to piss people off or something. Like, I don't know if that's true at all or not, but I thought it was kind of funny.
Sounds true to me.
Yeah.
There's also that video of Wrangler Brutes, and they're playing in front of this office building. It's almost like they set up a generator and just started playing. Yeah. And there's a woman that walks by, and I guess she's like not into it. Sam sort of chases after her. He starts doing this speech. He always does these speeches, I guess, whenever shows went sideways. He'd do these speeches about the Declaration of Independence or something. Or speaking of which, so I know you're not supposed to go to YouTube comments at all because it's just a cesspool of humanity, but I did look on there to check out some of the comments below this particular compilation album, and I'm going to fire a few at you here. So there's one by Patrick Culhane, and it was posted 4 years ago. He says, fun fact, the opening when Sam says suck my lizard was August 27th, 1989 at CBGB's. My birthday changed my life.
Makes it sound like just that. Just him saying that changed his life. Must have been a good show, though.
Yeah. Here's one from Ivan Rivera, posted 5 years ago. Sam McFeeters, all capital letters, 3 exclamation points. I am fucking laughing so hard right now. This brings me back to such great memories of Sam, all capitals, announcing to the crowd that nobody can dance as hard as me. Then he would throw himself into the crowd. I bought this on vinyl for $5. And this one's probably my favorite, although it's completely off base and maybe isn't something to joke about. But for None of the Nuns 6 months ago, Just says boring Nazi music.
What the fuck?
I think Born Against are pretty much as far away from Nazi music as you can get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because Adam had a shaved head or something. He said that. But lyrically and politically, yeah, they're the opposite.
Do you have any other memories of this record through the years, or any other thoughts about it? Both of us never saw them live, so we can't really go there.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about how this is probably one of the, even though it's not a real album, this is probably one of the albums I've listened to the most of any band or
Wow.
any recorded album. Yeah. There's a couple like the Faith Void split. For some reason, I can just listen to that endlessly on repeat. And the same with this. Not so much lately, but back in the day, I just used to listen to it on repeat, just listen to it, every day or every couple days or something. It still kind of holds up for me. Yeah, I still kind of like it just as much as I did back then, really. That's not the case with everything from that era, for sure.
Yeah, you mean you're not listening to the Struggle 7-inch every day?
No, yeah, there's certain things like that are way more particular, yeah. Or even something like the Sawhorse 7-inch or something. Like, I kind of still like the music a lot, but the lyrics seem more dated to me or something, yeah.
Some bands are like that. I could listen to Fugazi's first album and think that it was just recorded yesterday.
Yeah.
This album, this compilation album, has a really interesting flow, because you said that you still listen to it, or you could listen to it on repeat. But there's a lot going on here. It's not like it's a traditional, probably because it's a compilation, but also the band themselves aren't really, it's not song, this song, this song. It's just, here's a weird screwed up song with him just mumbling. Here's a really slow building riff with some samples in the background. And then you've got some straight ahead songs like Marian Child.
Once again, the battlefield is your body and those who want control lay down their torches. Black and white and red all over. They keep the backstreet budgets in business and advertise from a bullhorn. And the all-knowing medicine of his make-believe graveyard with its alleyway cross of all names. Make folks think so someday.
Yeah, there's a lot of variety on it, like you're saying. Yeah, like some songs are super fast, some are really slow. Like there's the well-fed fuck one about your boss being your best friend. That's really slow and like sludgy, Maybe that's part of why it's so much a replay value, they would say, right? There's so much variety.
Who is they? I want to know who they is.
Just trying to put myself outside the music industry, I guess.
Yeah.
I like the album too. They put out another CD, which is their album, Mind Patriotic Hymns for Children. Yeah. And then they had like a 10-inch EP that they put on that CD too. That's really different from this because that's like a cohesive album,
Even still, though, it still has a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's still a lot of variety.
They put out the 9 Patriotic Hymns for Children. Was it 10-inch or was it an LP?
That's the LP, yeah. And then the 10 inches they put on to the end, it's called Patriotic Battle Hymns. Okay. It's like a similar name, yeah, but they're different. But I guess the cover of it is like people actually bought it thinking it was just like a American patriotic album for children or something.
Wow, that would be a big surprise.
Yeah.
Do you remember coming into my record store and always hitting me with the Yo Born Against?
Oh. now that you mention it, yeah. I think we would do that on the phone too or something. Yeah, we'd just like pretend.
Do you remember actually how it goes?
Vaguely, yeah, that's on the album. Yeah, you better fucking.
It's like, yo, Born Against. You better be extremely fucking cautious who you talk shit about.
Yeah.
You're born against. You better be extremely fucking cautious about who you talk shit about.
I used to joke about that with other people too. Yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah, it's like a classic line.
Do you have any new bands or things you're listening to that you can plug?
I would plug this band, Maroon. They're from LA. They're really similar to like Swizz. I don't know if they're still around, but they put out a couple albums just a couple years ago. And it's some people that were in a band called Esperanza before that.
Okay.
It's Marron. I really recommend them if you're into Swizz and like DC hardcore or Ebullition style hardcore stuff. Or that new band, Red Hair.
Yeah.
They're really good too. And Marone is similar to them, yeah.
And you turned me on to the X Breathers, which are so good.
Oh,
We
yeah.
listen to that a lot. It's just really, I mean, No Means No inspired, weirdo, fast, hardcore, all the best things.
They're super good, yeah.
And we actually did another episode of this with No Means No's Wrong. That'll
Oh,
be
cool.
available as well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just re-listening to that recently, and it's still incredible. Yeah, that's one of the best albums of that time period for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, thank you too. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Flex your head!